enable me?
Yes, you're right. Sorry. Yes. Try now.
Okay, perfect. So, share. Okay. Think you should be able to see my
We can
screen.
see the screen. Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Please.
Okay, start again. Sorry, everyone, for the little technical issues. Going to move on with my agenda. I'm going to start just introducing myself briefly and my goals for today. Then I'm going to give you a little context about why I decided to dig into my research and what my findings were. And then I really want to give you some takeaways as agilists, especially for what you can do to help fill in the gap that I identified with my research. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a recent graduate from a double master's degree in management and strategy from Tsinghua University in Beijing and from London School of Economics. And earlier I had graduated from my bachelor's in economics and management. My work experience so far has focused on consulting, both in my university and through my internships. I did a lot of consulting work, and I'm currently working for a software company on open innovation projects. So my goal for today is create awareness of a matter that I got really close to, and really initiate some dialogue, both amongst yourselves and hopefully with universities too. And I also want to deliver some ideas, like concrete ideas of what you could actually do. So first of all, I'll just introduce you to what I learned and the things that you already probably know. So I learned about the Agile Manifesto and the values and the 12 principles that are associated to it just after having a chat with Corrado about what Agile was. He introduced me to the concept of Agile that I had only heard of from buzzwords, and reading it here and there, everybody was talking about Agile, but I didn't really understand that there was a whole methodology behind it. And again, I was exposed to management degrees in top universities for 5 years in my life, and then still did not understand that there was actually a full lot of knowledge and deep understanding behind the word Agile. I also didn't understand until I conducted my research that behind it there's a whole lot of a concept surrounding the iterative approach of Agile that is really different from how management degrees teach their students. I also dig deeper into what Agile was. I investigated the VUCA world and what it meant and how our world is transforming. I looked into books, for example, that wrote by Gil Broza, where he wrote about how Agile is not only for software teams, but is actually applicable to non-software teams. And I also dig deeper into understanding which industries were adopting Agile. And I discovered it's actually not only software and IT related fields that are adopting Agile, but indeed it's becoming more and more used in the market by other industries as well. For example, healthcare, transportations, logistics, finance, and many more. I then looked into what is taught about Agile and how universities are approaching the methodology and its teaching. So we know that educational institutions have a really important role in shaping the future labor force. And we also know that how we actually become really aware and really assimilate knowledge is through continuous repetition and reward. And this is also how we develop our soft skills the best. So I decided that I wanted to investigate how UK universities were generating awareness about and preparing their students for an increasingly VUCA world and the agile way of working. I wanted to understand this because I perceived a gap in between what is actually happening in the market, and I'm sure you guys know even better than me, and what is taught in universities. That is probably something that instead I know better than you because I just graduated. And I decided that because there's not a lot of research on this matter until now, I wanted to start with a descriptive research to really understand just what is there and what is not there. So I conducted a survey involving students from all UK universities. I had a survey that I wanted to cover 4 main aspects. The first was their declared awareness and knowledge of Agile, and either they had experience with it or not. The second was whether Agile was covered in any of their university curriculums or not. I also wanted to know what the career prospects and areas of interest of the people is. And I wanted to know whether there was actually a willingness to know more about Agile or not. So here are my results. My results are divided in 4 main areas. I will talk about the fields of study and how there's a great difference between the awareness and familiarity with Agile across fields of studies. I will talk about how work experience influences the degree of familiarity or not. I will talk about how group work projects held in universities have what effect they have on preparing the students towards an agile way of working. And finally, I will also share with you what I found out about the student demand about learning more about Agile. So every time I finish one of these 4 main topics, I will stop, and in case you have any questions or anything that you would like to raise, any point that you would like to open up for dialogue regarding this topic, I'm really happy to stop and continue once we've discussed this. So let's start with the first main topic: awareness and familiarity and exposure to Agile across fields of study. So my first finding was that across degrees, the degrees that had to do with management or related fields such as finance, HR, entrepreneurship, information systems management, they seem to have the most awareness of what Agile was. Whilst hard sciences and social sciences, as you can see in green, had really, really little awareness of Agile. So this means that actually only 20% and only 14% of respondents studying a hard science or social science had even any knowledge or ever heard of the word Agile methodology or Agile way of working. And I think this is already incredibly like a great thing to see in numbers, because it's something that is so already so exposed and so developed in the market that not even having heard of it is quite crazy. Then I dig deeper into the management related fields, and I saw that actually all of this awareness that, as we saw before, is only around 60%, is actually mostly coming from information systems and digital innovation degrees. And actually, if you look at finance and entrepreneurship, for example, they only have 33% of respondents and 50% of respondents, respectively, who declare having any awareness of Agile. And as we know, instead, in many banks, in many startups, Agile methodologies are increasingly adopted, and this is not reflected at all in university degrees exposure. And when I mean awareness, this means having no awareness. This means that the respondent had not even ever heard of the Agile methodologies concept before. This means that not even one lecture has covered the topic. But then if we also go and see what's the real substance behind awareness, we can also see that the main source of knowledge that they have about Agile is just word of mouth. I think that this is also quite incredible and it's like really representative of how poor the awareness and the real understanding of Agile is, because only, for example, 15-60% come from university course exposure. And if we look at students who actually have experience with Agile, numbers get even more significant. We see that across these three macro divisions of degrees, so hard sciences, social sciences, and management-related fields, there's completely no first-hand experience with Agile in hard sciences and social sciences. And even in management and related fields degrees, there is very little first-hand experience. And remember that these answers are coming from those who have declared who have an awareness of Agile in the first place. But within management and related fields, if we dig a little deeper, actually these first-hand experiences mainly come from information systems and digital innovation courses, and some from general management and leadership as well. But in relative terms, if we compare this means only 22% of respondents from general management and leadership degrees, and 86% of respondents from information systems and the digital innovation degrees. This means that actually there's a huge bias towards understanding the Agile methodologies just in these really specific degrees that have a focus on information systems and digital. And there's really little awareness and hands-on experience in all other degrees. Then I also wanted to understand from the students whether there's actually knowledge on what the university offers in terms of Agile. And numbers, as you can see, show that actually most students do not even know if the university offers something at all. And this probably means that they're just either there's no choice for them to have an elective, for example, covering Agile methodologies or Agile ways of working. They don't even know of the existence of probably any certification that the university offers or any training. But this also means that the university is probably not promoting this as well, if they have any offer. And within the management field, that, as we saw here, is again the one area of degree that is showing the least lack of knowledge in terms of university offering. We see that all this knowledge is actually just concentrated again in these specific information systems and digital degrees, and all the rest are almost all 100% stating that they have no knowledge at all whether the university is offering anything on Agile related. So do you have any points to raise about this? Are you surprised that universities are lagging behind so much in terms of creating awareness, giving opportunities to students to get engaged with this methodology, or at least giving them understanding of what is happening outside there in the market? And are you surprised that there's such a difference in the different fields of study? And do you have, were you expecting this at all? I'm really happy to answer questions now, or if you have questions later and you don't come up with any now, I'm also happy to go on.
Yeah, please, if you want to make some question, you can unmute yourself and make the question, or if you prefer, you can type the question in the chat, so I can read them to Sabrina.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. So you asked if we are surprised if this is happening, and I think that's just proving the theory that the universities and in general educational system is preparing us just for something that's been happening, you know, X years ago, and it's not up to date with markets, and it's just giving you theories. Unfortunately. But yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, thank you, Ula. I think you could say, let me say a few words about your experience, because you actually graduated how long? 3 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2018, and I also saw that even though my university was very work experience focused, we still got a lot of, I feel like we still lacked in practice, and it was more about studying in books and doing researches rather than finding out what's happening when you actually go to work. Which I think, because at the end, when you graduate and you go to work, you just realize that you don't know anything and you don't know how things are working. Yeah, and you have to, you know, learn everything anyway, even though you spend 3 or 4 years studying this topic.
Thank you.
I agree. I agree, and actually, even though I also was in a university that in my head was like a really good top ranked university in London, I was really happy with also all the experience and exposure to companies that I was having. When I then started working, I realized that there's so much that was taught in theory that was lagging behind the practice that was actually happening in the work.
Exactly, which is a bit sad, because you put so much effort into it. In England, you put even so much money into it. Yeah. And you still do struggle at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a missed opportunity for everyone, because it's a missed opportunity not only for the students, it's a missed opportunity for the universities, it's a missed opportunity for the companies, and it's definitely a missed opportunities for the countries overall, I believe.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on this.
Wow, amazing. There is a question from Roberto in the chat, but before that, I really would like to make a very, very quick question. In the context, I miss probably when you did the survey. I mean, when you contact the student to make the question, that makes sense. In these times could be a tricky question. And also, how many students actually you involved, and how many students respond to the survey? So, sorry, Roberto.
Okay. So I contacted the students during it was, I think, May. Yeah, late May, early June, and unfortunately, it was right at the start, in the crucial moment of Corona, so it was a really hard time to get engaged with people and also get people to give you their time to answer surveys. I used different channels. I used both because I wanted a diversified sort of group of students answering from different degrees. Of course, I have a little bias towards management degrees. I have more students responding from management degrees, but overall, I have 115 respondents, out of which less than 50% were from, around 30-40% were from management and related fields.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Roberto's question is, how much training is there available for non-agile methodology, for example, waterfall?
I believe that the whole, especially in management and related fields degrees, the whole exposure that student gets is around the waterfall method. And me personally, I was taught normal project management as it was happen in a waterfall method, and I had no exposure at all to any other method close to Agile. And instead, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but actually my interest began during my first year master's when I wanted to research the ING case, the ING's Agile transformation case. And I was looking for faculty who could help me with gathering data on this case. And I had really hard time even finding faculty who could help me understand Agile in the first place. So it was really hard to find within such a prestigious university as LSE faculty that could help me understand the methodology itself at all. And that was the first really surprising thing for me that triggered my interest in digging deeper in the topic.
Thank you, Sabrina. I think that we can continue. If we have more questions, we have a final QA session. But however, we continue with the QA session also during the presentation. Please go.
Sure. So the second main topic is the relation between the years of work experience of students and the familiarity that they have. So just clarify what's the difference between awareness and familiarity. So with awareness, I mean having any sort of knowledge or having heard of the Agile concept at all. And familiarity is the next step, is understanding to what extent this knowledge is deep in the understanding. So my first finding was that, not surprisingly, with the more years of work experience, the awareness with Agile increased. So this means that the more students were exposed to the actual market, the more it was likely that they at least got in touch with what Agile was. Okay. And then I digged a little deeper and I looked into the numbers, but I actually saw that even though awareness increased with years of work experience, the degree of familiarity did not show the same correlation. So this could mean that actually, even though you spend more years in the market, working in the market, you might get awareness of what Agile is about, but you might not come to an understanding of what it actually is and how it works. And I believe the cause of this could be that also within the market, there is still not enough exposure to non-software, non-IT teams to how these methodologies actually work. So there's not enough cross-functional exposure happening in firms or in organizations as well. And so if we look at the familiarity in general, it's really low. Most respondents declare that they're slightly familiar with Agile. And remember, these are the respondents that have in the first place declared that they have awareness at all. That we saw is already a reduced number of respondents. And we also don't know, actually, because this was a self-declaration. I didn't have the means, the tools, and the time to actually test their knowledge. So this is what they declared their familiarity was. But because we also know that there's a lot of buzzwords around Agile and agility, there's also the chance that some of these slightly familiar answers were also just a misconception of Agile. So do you have any points to raise about the buzzword around Agile and agility? And have you ever experienced people who were talking about Agile as if they knew about it, but then whilst they started talking, you realized that actually they were not really backed up by any substance in their words? Or do you have any comments on how much this word Agile is used nowadays and whether it's used appropriately?
Please unmute again if you have some question. Actually, I have a question on this part of your presentation, Sabrina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is the feedback that these guys that have awareness and start to, let me say, a growing familiarity with Agile concept, the feedback of their and the coming in the job? I mean, you mentioned that most of people that already have an awareness is because they are more exposed to, let me say, the rest of the world and not only to the university. So I'm thinking probably they had some stage somewhere, they start working somewhere, they have friends that are working or something like that. But what was the feedback that they have collected when they enter in the market and they realize that, okay, there is something that we didn't aware, we were not aware, that probably we should?
I think that a lot of students and young professionals entering the market, if they don't get the chance to really work with an Agile team, or at least experience in some way what an Agile team is about, there stays and there remains a huge misconception of what Agile working is. A lot of people confuse agility and Agile working with flexibility. And I've realized this not only through my surveys, but actually also whilst confronting myself with my peers in university. And a lot of people just thought that they were the same thing. They were almost synonyms. So just to get back to your question, when people got into the market, their awareness might have increased, but if they didn't have a real connection to an Agile team, they might have gained an awareness that might be just a misconception of what it actually is about.
Thank you. Yeah, you did the response. Yeah, sure. Any more questions? Please don't be shy.
I don't bite.
Okay, I have a question for all of you, actually. What do you think about the data that Sabrina has shared till now? Is this something that you realize actually happening in your companies when, for example, a newcomers just graduated entering your team, or what is your experience with your business people? Because what I really like of the research that Sabrina did is that we are talking about the business people. We are talking about the manager of the future here. So people that probably will start working with us, let me say, in the next, let me say, 10 years or something like that. Okay, there is a question about what do you mean by flexible working? If you can explain this misunderstanding between agility and work from home.
Yeah.
Please.
So I believe there's a misunderstanding in the two terms. So by flexible working, I mean flexibility in terms of where you work from and your working hours, for example. That is what flexible working is about. And a lot of people confuse flexibility with agility, or don't really understand where the borders lie between them.
I can confirm absolutely this, but this is, let me say, it's a fault from media, because they talk about agile working because we are working from home when we, let me say, want, okay, but actually that's not true. That's not true. It's because the two concepts actually were born together, I mean, the same time. So they are twins, but actually they have different lives, however.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, no question. So please go ahead, Sabrina. Go ahead.
And maybe I'll just add another comment to this, since we touched upon it. And actually, I believe that flexibility and agility are much more distant than people might think, because even though agile methodologies want to make you want to prepare you to be ready to address uncertainty, volatility, complexity, at the same time, to do this, they require consistency, and they require specific practices that have to be held regularly in order to be ready for this. And a lot of people confuse this flexibility and don't see that there's a lot of consistency and, in a certain way, rigid rules that have to be respected for this agility to take place. So yeah, this is just a point that I wanted to make. So I'll go on with the next area of findings, and it's about group work and the development of soft skills. So in the first place, I wanted to know from students how much and what quality of guidelines they are given when they get to work with teams. And I found out that actually, in general, they are not given as many guidelines on how to work with the team. Students are given guidelines on what the goals to reach are, or what the objective is, or what the problem to solve is about, but they're not told, okay, this is how you should about going to solve this problem. This is how you should go about achieving your goal. They're just told this is where you have to get. So they're not taught properly how to work together, but just what work to deliver. And I always, through a self-assessment, I looked at what was the correlation between exposure to group work and the effect on how good communication skills were developed. And yes, there seems to be a correlation, especially if you have over 3/4 of your courses that require some sort of working with teams and groups, then communication skills seem to be developed to a greater extent. And in terms of collaboration skills, instead, we can see that there's a sort of capped positive effect in developing development of the collaboration skills. So the more students get exposed to working in teams, and to some extent, the more they develop their collaboration skills. But actually, after some time, an increase in the amount of group work that they get to do does not necessarily result in a betterment of their collaboration skills. And this, again, what could be the case and what could be the reason for this? I believe that a reason for this could be going back to the guidelines that are given to students. It could be about the quality of the guidelines, because already we saw that the amount of guidelines on how to work together are quite poor. But if the amount of group work that the student is exposed to increases, doesn't result an increase in collaboration skills unless it's to some certain threshold, this means that the guidelines that are given to them are not of high quality enough to teach them how to actually collaborate better with their peers. Do you have any points about this? Do you think that there's enough teaching on how to work together as a team, and whether is it something, do you think that it's even possible to teach at a university level, or is it something that has just to be taught, self-taught with time? Or I'm not sure how many of you are recent graduates or not. If you want to share your experience, I'm really happy to hear it out.
Sabrina, just one comment from me, but
Mm-hmm.
do you think that there is a gap? I mean, okay, I have an image in my mind. Okay, let me share this.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like in university, for helping people to develop this collaboration model, working in group all together, they
Mm-hmm.
actually throw the guys into the water to make them swim without any lesson in advance.
I didn't hear the last part really well. So
I mean, I was thinking if the university asked to the students to work
mm-hmm.
together, to collaborate, to create work group, let me say, activities, but
Yeah.
actually they do not provide them any guidelines to make them working better. So they told them, okay, create a group and prepare this outcome, but without any, I don't mean training, but maybe any help to make them work in a better way, in an effective way.
Mm-hmm. So what I can tell you is that the level of guidance that that is given is usually limited to a certain theoretical course on how to work together as a team and how to better succeed as a team. But then if you look at practical guidelines that students can actually follow in a real project, this is almost zero. All of my projects, and there were many for all my courses, I had at least one group project to deliver. In all of them, I was not told how I should organize my teamwork, how we should divide the work, how things should be done to better succeed and prepare a better outcome. But it was rather, the focus was rather on on what we should deliver, and what were the what was the checklist to understand if a work is of high quality or not, but really little focus on how to get to this high quality work.
And do you think that, and what could be the effect of an exposure to some methodology, some way of working? Do you think that the life of student will be better? The results will be more valuable? What do you think, given your experience?
I think that that these methodologies have to be tailored and adapted to the context of universities and the context of projects that are assigned to students in universities, because of course they cannot be just copy and pasted in a university environment. So I still believe there's really little real availability of actual documentation on real practical guidelines on how to make this happen. But I believe if this were the case, then quality of work, or at least preparedness, would definitely increase. And this could not only benefit the single project that the students are working on, but I believe, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we get better at things with repetition. We get better at things by really putting our hands on it more and more times. And if it's not going to influence directly our really first project, with which we're giving guidelines on the steps that we should follow to better work as a team, it's definitely going to have a longer term impact on the 5th, 6th projects that we get to work on.
Thank you. Okay, no question. We can move to the next session.
Okay. So the last part of my results were focusing on understanding whether there was student demand at all about on learning more about Agile. So the first thing I did was present them with some reliable source, presenting some facts or some strong statements about what Agile could mean and what benefits Agile could have. And here's just one of the examples that I presented them with. And I also tried to incorporate in these examples applications of Agiles and benefits that could come to different areas of business and different functions and industries as well. And after I shared these this information and these sources with them, I asked them whether they believe that universities should offer Agile as part of the university curriculum. And the most respondents answered that this should be the case. And in particular, in management-related degrees, 42% of respondents stated that they strongly agree that universities should incorporate Agile more in the curriculum, and only really small percent, 5% of respondents stated that they disagreed with this. So this means that once students understand the actual importance and the actual benefits that could arise through working in an Agile way, they really get interested in knowing more about Agile and really getting the exposure through their university curriculum. And when they were asked in how they would like this increased exposure to happen, 70% of students opted for within university exposure, and only 30% answered that they would rather have access to external certifications or external trainings. So it's interesting to see that actually students want the exposure, and they want the exposure from their universities. And I also asked them to give me some feedback and examples on what sort of suggestions they had in increasing this exposure. And some mentioned trainings with the university. A lot of people mentioned more case studies that they can use to understand how it's applied to different fields and different functions and environments. many students opted for collaborations with real clients, so staying within the university context, but requiring clients, firms, organizations from outside to give them some work and give them some exposure inside the university context. And some few respondents also answered that they would like to have hands-on activities and games to really understand and appreciate the agile. Do you have any comments on what this could mean for an agilist, what sort of opportunities it could open up for companies, and do you have any questions to raise on this part of the results?
Okay, I was on mute. Quick question from me. In your research, do you find someone that actually was not only exposed but really interested, so that, for example, he or she attended to an external training, took eventually a certification or something like that?
Yes, but they were only students who were pursuing a degree specialized in information systems, in digital, in some more technical field of study.
Oh, there is a question from Hirshendu. What was the response from non-managerial student from social science or arts?
In terms of willingness?
Please, Hirshendu. You can unmute and enter in the conversation, Hirshendu, if you can. Or please provide more details on your question.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
I was more interested in the last question, Sabrina, where students gave ideas in terms of how it could be implemented, and most of it was within university. So I was thinking whether you had asked that question to the non-management students as well, and what was the response?
Yes, that question was asked to everyone, and in non-management students especially, I noticed that there were answers and suggestions in practice, in activities and games, and on case studies. A lot of them.
Another question coming.
In management degrees, the majority of students answered that they wanted exposure through external client projects.
Thank you, Sabrina. Another question, do you know of any partnership or collaboration between universities and the Agile community?
No, unfortunately not. I would love to have heard of this, but unfortunately I wasn't exposed to this myself, and none of the people that I had the chance to talk to heard of any real collaboration in these strict terms.
Yeah, I can mention another case that we followed about another cases on that happened also here in UK, and this actually happened through the Agile community. I mean, I know of a survey that we asked to fulfill probably March, something like that, if I correctly remember, for another research about Agile and non-Agile teams working together. But again, I want to say that this is not something that I can consider a collaboration between the university and the Agile community, but a collaboration between a student of a university and the Agile community. that is something different, exactly like Sabrina did. This is not a university initiative.
Yeah.
It's a person that had an idea about research.
Yeah, exactly. And this means that it's limited to the understanding of that single student, and it's not giving the chance to the whole university cohort to actually get the value out of the collaboration.
Thank you, Sabrina. And I think this is exactly the reason why this kind of research are so valuable for us. Okay, there is another, let me say it's a long test, probably it's more a comment. While things may have changed since I went to university, I think the professor teaching at university are more academic than have real life experiences. The only way to learn how things work in companies, you have to learn by experience. I mean, by being in that environment. I have 2 master's degrees, but everything I learned that was relevant to me in real working life, I learned on the job and not at university. This is a comment from Nish, London-based.
Yeah, I think this is I can definitely relate to this. I believe universities for now are doing a good job in shaping our way of thinking and just creating open-mindedness towards learning and interpreting the world that surrounds us and the business that we're going to join and work for. But it is not doing as good a job in providing us with real tools that we can then access once we become part of the workforce. Students, I believe, are really unprepared when they join the workforce, given the academic career that they had.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. Thank you. Yeah, we can go to the summary part of the presentation.
So here's just in a snapshot summary of the results and the main solutions that I identified for the results and some practical ideas on how these solutions could look like in the short term. So for the first macro area, that, just to recap, was about unequal awareness amongst the fields of study. I believe the solution would be to teach and work with Agile in non-software degrees. So as I mentioned in the first part of the presentation, non-software degrees really get little exposure to Agile. So there's a real imbalance between what degrees are taught, with a real big bias in information systems focused degrees. And I believe a short-term idea on how to solve this could be offering cross-functional projects across departments. So why not having the students belonging to these different degrees working together on Agile projects? I believe this could both mitigate this unbalance and unequal exposure, and also give the chance to all of them to learn from each other. In the second area of results, so the work experience and how there's a capped familiarity to Agile given work experience, I believe the solution instead in the market is that of still continue working on forcing this exposure to non-IT functions. I believe that non-Agile teams still have a hard time interacting and really working together with Agile teams. And I think that we should help non-IT functions by tailoring the Agile methods to their non-IT departments. So if they if they're given the chance to really get some practical guideline on how they could apply agile methods in their daily jobs, then this could help them understand the benefits of such methodology, and could also enhance the collaboration with agile teams. In the area of group work and soft skills development, we've saw that there is very little guidelines given to students on how to work together as a team. And even when more guidelines are given, the quality seems to not be as good, because at some point, an increased exposure to group work does not result in a betterment of collaboration skills. So we have to create an understanding of what is actually needed to succeed in agile teams, and this could be done by providing students with some practical guidelines on how to reproduce agile in their environment. Because I think there's a sense of distance with what agile practices are to what the real environment and context of universities is. Students don't understand, those few students who have awareness or familiarity with agile do not understand that they could actually shape agile and the whole concept, because at the end of the day, agile is a way of working. It's an approach to work. It's a mentality. It's a way to look at how things should be done. And this can be adapted. It is founded on its 4 values and 12 principles. This should be adapted in its practices to different environments and different contexts. And if some more practical guidelines are given to students, probably they can get closer to understanding and then actually putting into practice the benefits of this methodology. And in terms of student demand, I believe there's actually results show that there's a huge gap in the exploitation of this demand that would be there, but is not actually is not supplied with an adequate exposure. And students should be given the chance to learn and get involved with agile, and universities should promote agile much more than they do now, and provide some hands-on opportunities to students to actually understand what it is about. And I think it's especially in this final point that agilists and people from the workplace, like you guys, can really have a say in this, can really make a difference. Because if universities are not realizing this themselves, and if universities don't have the resources to do it because faculty is not as prepared as it should be, and academics research is not up to date with what is actually there, maybe they need an input, they need help from the outside to make this happen. So the main takeaways that I wanted to leave you with today is the understanding that there's, even though you guys might be immersed in your reality, in your everyday life, there is actually a huge lack of awareness and knowledge of what agile is, and what agile could mean, and how agile what benefits it could bring to the future labor market. And I think this is an issue that should be really tackled in the present, because things are speeding up and there will be a huge shortage of adequate resources in the future. I also want to underline that there's a huge unbalance between the degrees, and that software degrees seem to have a better understanding, but actually this is not replicated in the other degrees. There is a lot of space for improvement in terms of providing guidance and training and practical practical guidance to the students on what they could actually do and how to put things in practice. And there's there's also the demand from the students to learn. So there's a lot of sorry guys, unexploited opportunities out there. Sorry, I'll just take a minute to drink some water. Okay, and before we go on to the final Q&A, I will share with you the limitations of my research that also have repercussions on my suggested next steps. As I mentioned earlier, the respondents, unfortunately, were not as high volume as I would have wanted to. It was a really hard moment to gather data in, and also the time that I had to do this was limited. And I also didn't actually test in practice what the real understanding and the real knowledge of Agile was from the students. It was a self-assessment. So my suggested next step is to dig deeper into researching this awareness and to understand how big this gap is between the market and the students' awareness, identifying the challenges that implementing these practices in a university environment could be. And these are many, because in universities, students are working on probably multiple projects at a time. They have less time to dedicate to single projects. And the context is just very different from a working environment one. So rules have to be adapted. So there's challenges to dig deeper into and to take into consideration. And then for further investigation, I believe it would be really interesting to understand what could be the effect of implementing these changes, these betterments in the university, and seeing what is the effect and how long it takes to have an effect in the market, and how quickly does the labor force, how better it gets prepared and in how much time. Do you have any questions overall about any of the 4 topics we covered, or any of the last points that are raised?
Amazing, amazing, Sabrina. Yeah, there is an hand raised from Harun.
Yes, no, fantastic presentation. Great research work. I'm wondering if one area to investigate is using the students' activities and sort of existence. Obviously, we assuming we get back to more normal times eventually, as a platform of agilizing, meaning, there's hundreds in the average uni, there's, dozens, hundreds of different clubs and different organizations. They all have to plan, typically students struggle with that. I mean, we've all been there. So maybe using that ecology, intramural sports, the hundreds of activities, concerts, all those things.
Yeah.
Almost build think of it as like a coaching laboratory through that population that would have to self-organize anyways, right? I mean, there's always the leader of the club. Well, what does he or she do? They usually struggle. They go Google something. Well, having almost like a resource or a training center for them to sort of become awoken to these approaches, and instead of sort of top down going through the academic ecology, you kind of come bottom up through the student ecology as an approach. That's something I just thought of that might be an interesting area to investigate. It doesn't require a lot of resources, cost wise. So, anyways, does that make sense or no?
Yeah, Aaron, I think that is a really interesting point that you raised, and I think that it could be really interesting and powerful to do this through the student body itself. My only concern is that if it has to come from the students, so from a bottom-up approach, how do we make sure that these students have the right understanding and the right tools to make this happen?
I mean, I think the opportunity is that, you know, in any large city on earth, there's a whole pile of us that are out there that can virtualize, that can help curate, that there's a ton of stuff online using tools like personal agile, personal Kanban, whatever. So getting off the ground doesn't require a lot, and it could allow them to sort of tailor, you know, personal Kanban for study habits, right? You know, you could start to sort of incorporate those things, and you know, you wouldn't need a 2-semester course with, you know, hundreds of hours to learn how to do this. You need, you know, a 1 to 4 hour workshop, or 1 to 30 minutes to 2 hours or whatever, to get people working tools.
Yeah. So do you believe that also, if it were a bottom-up approach, do you believe that a collaboration with external parties would still be beneficial?
Absolutely. I think it'd be critical. It T-bones, it intersects the requisite of the environment to create the experience, which students often struggle with, right? They're highly dependent on their course curriculum to create experiences. This uses the 2, 3, 4 years they're going to be there as their experience, you know, ecosystem. And and then the outside partners, to be blunt, don't have to sort of go through the bureaucratic BS, as much of it, let's say, as they would if they were trying to sort of help redesign a course and just all that drama into, you know, trying to implement top down. So that's, and there's already a system almost in every school. You know, there's ski trips to Sweden. There's, you know, there's all these sort of third parties that engage with students. So this just becomes another set of third party, you know, creating the Agile Club basically, and then letting that as the path in for everyone that wants to come from the outside in to help.
Yeah, I believe this is also a great opportunity, and if it's not coming from the students itself, I think it would be great if the outside market or third party suggested this to the student body then, because if the awareness is not there, the chances that students come up with this is really, really low, unfortunately.
Of course. I mean, one advantage you have, the last point here, sorry, is you can, odds are within the IT and technology and computer engineering departments, there's somebody, right, that is into this. There's somebody, there's graduate students, there's somebody that this matters to, so they can become this credible interface for outsiders to work with. So it's not just a pure outsider, a whole bunch of weird old people showing up trying to teach you Agile, but it's actually this process that that gets student, you know, maybe more senior student led or graduate student led, whatever.
Yeah, or one of those few students who answered having a really high familiarity from information system degrees. Right. So even if it does spark from there, if it's spread and if they do a good job in getting other degrees engaged, this could be a real big value added across the student body. Yes, I agree.
I have
a question for you guys, actually, because I wanted to know whether you have an opinion on how it would be, what would be the best way to collaborate from an external party's point of view. Do you think a short-term, let's say 1 or 2 weeks, where students are exposed to workshops is the best solution, maybe at the beginning of the year, so that they can assimilate the knowledge that they need to then work on the projects for the rest of the year? Or is it better to have a constant throughout the year touch base every month or every 2 weeks or every semester?
I think it's touch on a regular basis. It's engaging regularly, and and leveraging the student ecology, right? So Slack or any digital ecosystems that students live in, right? Not trying to drag them to sort of models that maybe are more legacy. Aging myself. It's having, living in their world and helping them and tailoring this to value, right? Like if we're going to say agile, it's not our agile, it's their agile. So, if they need, how are they going to plan their holiday break? How are they going to plan their spring trip to Europe for the first, or to Germany with their friends for the first time away from their parents? Like all these very practical things that, those of us that are older have gone through them. We're basically a mess, and everyone running at the last second, and you got to get a bus ticket, and everyone like, where is he? Did you forget his bag? I mean, we've all, the first couple times you do this, it's pretty bad. We all say that's college experience, and it's like, no, that's just mismanagement and scaring us into, screwing up a good time. So it's like, showing how you could really use these, and I think at a practical level, having, my daughters have gone through college, is that first year when kids have to sort of figure out how to really whittle down all the options they have. It's a real struggle for a big chunk of kids. I mean, it just is. And some don't have that problem, but I think a lot of kids do, or they eventually do. Maybe it's their third year, right? When they really get into their core competency, whatever it is. And this can be a toolbox that helps people get down that path, funnels them to a simplicity so they don't feel overwhelmed. So maybe even partnering with the mental health, units that almost every unit has now. That could be a great partner there.
Yeah, I believe. And do you know of, or do you believe there could be a good idea to create, or what could be the solution to create this kind of dialogue amongst the Agile community? Because I believe that the most impact and the highest speed we can have in actually making things happen is if dialogue starts to happen amongst those who can spark this. Do you think there's like better or worse channels where this kind of dialogue can be initiated, or where it could be more or less effective?
I mean, I think creating these digital channels, so creating a meetup group for, Agile for students, or student Agile. Agile is something that's about them, about the students, not about us. Slack groups, everything linked around the student, TikTok, whatever. All I know, all the crap you guys use. I'm not trying to judge it. I'm just saying it's stuff I cannot spend. I just can't get there. Right. That's my wall. But that ecosystem, right, and dropping in little value hints, right? There's a lot like these, like the principles, maybe dropping in a principle of the day, and then out of that, people say, well, what's that mean? And then you have sort of a student explanation of it, and then we try to figure out, or you guys try to figure out as students how that applies, how that can apply. I mean, think about something very practical here. Students often have to pick elective courses, and they go through this incredibly painful process between them, their counselors, their friends, and their parents. And it's a really it's such not just inefficient, it's just a very unhealthy process that either forces you to just make a final choice. All right, just take the art class, and it just turns into that sort of, it's very backlog intelligent. And I think you could use that as a tool, just picking classes, like a value stream, whatever. So I think there's a lot there that you can really get kids going on.
Yeah. But do you believe that this should be like, shouldn't universities make it almost compulsory to at least have a certain amount of exposure to what this means, because it's becoming so crucial and so spread out, especially in some markets, some industries, some functions, that shouldn't it be in some way almost mandatory to cover this in a lecture, to at least have an understanding of what this is about? Or because if it comes from a bottom up, it may also not reach out to everyone necessarily, or it may take a little more time.
Well, it will take more time. I think if you bang your head against the corporate academic wall, that will take, well, two things. You will burn out and get very disillusioned, which is not probably, you can wait till years later when you have corporate careers like us to actually do that. But so right now you can still believe and everything can work out and it's Disneyland. But no, but at the bottom up, I mean, being honest, as a bottom up, you'll have far more positive feedback in the system. And that's healthy, right? And
so
I wouldn't
believe like
that.
Longer term, it's more healthy doing it from a bottom-up approach.
I mean, I believe in the beginning, it's very important when you do anything that's change-oriented to not just start running into walls immediately, because I think most people then just, and especially I think the younger you are and the newer it is to you, it just becomes so disillusioning. Whereas if you have a lot of positive feedback, you'll eventually, you know, out of every 100 people, there's a very dominant personality, like a DISC sort of rating. And those students will make it clear to, you know, leadership, you know, how come you're giving us this announcement with 2 days notice? This is stupid. When I do my agile, blah, 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 here's my worksheet, and they pull a poster up in front of all the leadership. It's like, eventually someone gets called on it. And then that's how you start to trigger, I think, institutional behavior. I mean, you get lucky. Maybe if you get lucky, you convince a chancellor or someone senior or trustee, and that's great. But I just don't think that can be, that should be where you put all your eggs in, because you're betting a lot on that at that point.
Yeah, I think it should be a balance of the two, because I think also the way in which the type of exposure and the way students are taught could be very different from the two sides, and both could be valuable in different ways. I believe, as you said, that for the longer term, probably if they can start with a small bite of it and have fun in the meantime and not see it as a sort of assessment, it's probably gonna also have them get close to her, let's say, with the heart as well. But yes, definitely a healthy balance of the two could be probably the best solution.
Yeah, so sorry for jumping in. I know that David has a question. Okay, but let me just share 1 minute for 1 minute, a couple of experience around what we are discussing. David, be patient. As you can imagine, I am pretty involved in this kind of, let me say, cross-fertilization between universities and the real world, let me say, the company's world. I had a couple of experience that are really, let me say, in contrast. The first one that I want to share is that I tried to arrange with the university a workshop about Agile in a game session, in a very large game session. And after 2 months of yes, we want, yes, we want, yes, we want, we were not able to find a location for arranging, let me say, 40, 50 people all together to make this workshop. So again, it's really strange that a university that has so many rooms, so many spaces, were in struggle to find a location for a workshop that we arranged for their students. Okay, so this was the first experience. The second one that is different, but not so different, is that a couple of years ago, I had a collaboration with a secondary school with children between 10 and 11 years old. Okay, so they are students, but not the same kind of students. Okay, the goal of this collaboration was to develop a serious game on mathematics. Okay, So a group of 10 coaches were selected to help 10 different classes in working on their idea on a mathematical game. Okay, this was the scenario. And after a few days that we start working, and there were so many ideas put on the table, there were a lot of confusion. Together with the teacher, we start introducing Scrum for School. That is a very simplified version of Scrum that is just tailored for children, okay, between 10 and 14 years old, something like that. And actually, the job in the class completely switched on to a much more productive way of working. So after a couple of sessions, when we present a couple of topics such as a Kanban board, such as prioritization, such as roughly estimation and what else, we were able to arrange the work in, let me say, absolutely amazing way. So just to share this experience.
Yeah, really interesting. So my comment for the first experience that you shared is that probably the university, if the excuse for not having the event held was the room, the lack of space, which is of course arrangeable if it's something they really want. I think the problem was their appreciation and real understanding of the value added that event could bring was not deep enough, probably. And this is probably also because the level of general awareness in academia is just also not high enough. And this, of course, has repercussions on the student body and what the curriculums look like and what is taught in classrooms.
Yeah, this is confirmed. This is confirmed from your presentation. David, thank you for your patience. Please unmute and ask your question.
I just want to share my experience of, so during the summer, I was a virtual intern manager for 2 students. So they're in their second and third years in their degree, and they came in so I work in the finance industry, technology based, but they came in from mathematics and physics. And didn't have any exposure to Agile. So just to confirm there on that they didn't get any experience, but through the 3 weeks they had with us, they did a business project and an innovation project. We put them through agility training. I also, as their virtual manager, put them in front of some thought leaders in the company and tried to get them exposure. So that triggered a lot, and they were wowed by it. They hadn't seen any of this before. So it was really good. So my question is, have you, in your respondents, or have you seen any of the respondents to say, maybe you could ask them as well, have you done some summer internships, and have you had any experience when you got, real world examples? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is just, it'd be great to connect you with our graduate recruitment person and just share your information with her, because I think she'd find it very valuable in understanding how to set the next graduate program and so on. Mm-hmm. And the intern, and even the intern program. So when we take a large, we take 200 people a year intern intake. So it'd be good to, mm-hmm. Your research would be great to tailor their approach.
I would be very happy to do that. So if you want to,
I'll connect you on LinkedIn.
Connect me. I'm really happy to do that. I think my LinkedIn link is on the description of the event.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing your experience. Actually, I was really happy to hear that you had this mentoring program with your student through a virtual internship. And I think that's really cool, especially in these times, that there's also the possibility of having this chance and this exposure done through a virtual experience. And this could also make the scale so much bigger, and the level of exposure so much bigger if it doesn't require actually having the physical appearance at the spot or at the internship. And I believe many students, if they knew of opportunities like this, for example, a virtual, maybe part-time internship during their studies to get this kind of exposure, I am pretty sure that they would take the chance.
Yeah, because normally we do like it's a 6-week program. They come into the office, but this year it was cut down, and we met at a global event. So there was like 450 people across the globe. So I had somebody from Hyderabad and somebody from London. So it was great for diversity as well. So
amazing. I have to say, amazing. Thank you for sharing this, David. Really, really great.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we have time for one more question eventually. Just a confirmation. Aaron, where are you calling from? This is for Sabrina because we know each other.
Sure. I'm in northern New Jersey in the US.
Okay.
I get from the accent. I was like,
I'm actually from California originally, so I don't have a New York accent, but that's okay.
Yeah, I guess there's some people following from the States, and I'm not sure where else from the world, what locations. I think Corrado asked this question in the really beginning of the webinar, but I didn't have the chance to see the answers to the questions of where all the people listening tonight are listening from.
Yeah, so I have a few friends of mine that work at universities here in New Jersey, New York, and I've been dragging them into Agile. Some are department heads, et cetera, and it's brutal. I mean, it just is. And these are people who are forward thinkers and really want to embrace it, but the institutional culture. That's why I really recommended kind of coming bottom up because of just that experience. It's that there's a lot of there's just an enormous pedagogical institutional framework in almost all universities in the world, where you're just not bringing in these sort of dynamic, a little bit in the sciences. That's different because the laboratory settings, but a lot of the traditional, course frameworks, it's just they get very set in stone. So that's why I was thinking from the bottom up, and actually building on what David said about the program that he had, or that his company has. What could be interesting is at your university, your intern placement programs, which those are people that have to, that connect to hundreds of companies around you, or dozens at least. Maybe there could be a little 2-day workshop or 4-hour workshop for those students of, kind of just basic intro Agile skills. And I'm sure some percentage of those public sector and private sector partners would appreciate that, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you raised a really, really important point with this bottom-up approach. And I have to say it was something that I had underestimated. So thank you for sharing that.
Fantastic job.
Never too early to start Agile. So this is my son's Kanban board for his homework.
Oh, that's
when
great.
He's homeschooling, and he's 7 years old. So it's never too, but there's only a few of us that do that. But everybody I talk to at work, they're like, oh yeah, we have one of those too.
Great.
Yeah, amazing. However, I think that just to close this session, that was really, really interesting. Again, next week we are going to talk about what is going to happen to Agile in 5 years. So we have the ideal date of 2025. Okay, so this will be an interactive workshop. But I think that also today we discover something about the Agile of the future, that probably we have, as a community, we have to do something more to make the awareness, but also the knowledge about this way of working that actually saved in these times so many companies. I mean, in these times, we really realize how Agile is important for the industries in general, not talking about only IT, but for the industry in general. So thank you, Sabrina, for giving us the opportunity to have something.
For having me. Thank you for listening for so long and for engaging with me. It was a great pleasure to share my research with you.
Yeah. And okay, guys, thank you for your collaboration in this session. And I hope to see you next week with our next event. Enjoy the evening or the afternoon. Where are you based? I don't know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yep. Super job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Sabrina, I sent you my my LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, I can send you information and stuff that I put together also.